Hello, folks, and welcome back to another part of this series where we're talking all about recovering from religion, the different programs that recovering from religion has, how they work, and we get to meet the people who are kind of running and in charge of those programs. And so today we're going to talk about the whole volunteer program and how we get them onboarded, and that kind of process. And who better to talk to me about it than the volunteer director and the secretary of the board, Shana Rubio. Shana, thanks for joining me today.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, before we kind of get into the program, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are, kind of how you got to where you're at now, and I know that you've had a really great story coming out of religion and into RfR.
Mm-hmm. So it was a dark and stormy night. No, I was. So I was born into this mind controlling doomsday cult, better known as Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was indoctrinated since birth, of course, and then when I was 28, I was kicked out. It was a pretty much impossible situation, and I was more or less forced out. But they disfellowshipped me, which means that I got shunned by all of my friends and family, and I was pretty much left with nothing, because when they disfellowshipped me, they read me a scripture that they said applied to me, that said, "We leave you in Satan's hands." So I felt that I had no
Whoa.
other. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
it was so sweet. I felt the love. Warm fuzzies everywhere. So I felt that I was pretty much doomed. From that point on, I was just waiting around for what the witnesses call Armageddon to come, and for the God that I had spent 28 years of my life worshiping to kill me in that final war. So I just kind of drifted through life waiting to die.
Did you feel that judgment was like right around the corner, like it would happen in your lifetime or within the next 10 years or something?
Absolutely. They would always tell us it's right around the corner. The end is right around the
Mhm.
corner. And then you can imagine how I felt in 2011, whenever 9/11 happened in September. I was like, okay, this is it. I guess I'll just wait around until it hits me, because I figured that was prophecy being fulfilled.
Mhm.
And it's starting in New York, and pretty soon it'll come to Colorado, and that'll be the end. Um, so it was kind of like I believed in a form of destiny. And so I didn't really put much effort into living. I just kind of let things occur. And so then in 2017, I believe it was 2016 or 2017, I was introduced to the subreddit called XJW, or Ex Jehovah's Witness.
Mhm.
And I had no idea that there were other people just like me in the world that had been excommunicated or disfellowshipped, as they call it, who were like drifting through life, trying to figure out how to navigate in a world that we were never prepared to live in. The world, or worldly people as they were called, it was just a super scary place, and all they ever wanted was, for your demise, for you to be unhappy. It was really distorted, the 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 point of view that we were given about people who were not Jehovah's Witnesses. And of course, they were all going to die in Armageddon, so you wouldn't want to be friends with somebody who was destined to destruction. So then I started reading the stories in that subreddit, and I realized that I had been fed a bunch of lies, and much of the decisions that I had made in my life had been completely 100% affected by the lies that I was told in the indoctrination process. So then I thought, well, then what is the truth? Because they call themselves the truth. What is the real truth? And I went down, thank goodness for the internet. I went down multiple rabbit holes. And the first one was just to figure out, so how did this all get started? How did the Jehovah's Witnesses in the beginning of I think it was the 20th century, 19th century, how did they get started? Who was this Russell and Rutherford fellows that got the ball rolling? And then I realized that they were just, at least one of them was terribly misogynistic. He was a horrible fellow. Nobody would like him. And he kind of muscled his way into the president position. And I thought, I need to find out what else is out there, because I didn't even explore whenever I was 28. I didn't even bother, because I'm gonna die. So I went and looking for, not necessarily atheists, because that's a huge leap, communities. I just looked for things that weren't overtly religious. And I found this podcast called Secular Sexuality by this guy named Dr. Darrell Ray. And I was just, I learned so much about sex and sexuality in general, and it was so informative. And so I believe it was, I heard him mention recovering from religion on that podcast, because I think it was just barely getting going. And I think the main impetus for me finding out about recovering from religion is because I started an ex-Jehovah's Witness meetup group. And one person who responded was never a witness. And he said, I think you'd be really interested in this group that I meet with once a month at the Secular Hub. And we all get together, and we're all people who have been a part of a religion, and we're not anymore. And at the time, I was a one-string banjo. It was JW or nothing. I didn't want to hear about Baptists or evangelicals. You guys are a different bad tribe. You're not my tribe. And then something in his email really made me start thinking. I'm like, well, let me give it a try. Why not? It's not like it's against my religion. So I showed up, and I was just amazed. I mean, it took me a while, because I was reeling afterward, because their stories are very similar. Anybody who's been raised in a cult or a cult-like atmosphere has very similar reactions. And once you leave, there's you're almost all dumped in the same black hole. So I continued going religiously, and then I thought I had come to the point where I was healed enough in my recovery that I was ready to start volunteering. And so I just filled out the application, got interviewed, and I started off as an agent. And it's just really not my shtick. I'm more of a behind the scenes person. If there's a some kind of a organization, I'm like in the back, making sure everybody has enough water, that the permits have been pulled, that we're prepared, and everybody's on time, and we're organized. I just didn't feel like I was doing well as an agent. I only answered a few chats, and it just didn't set well with me. I didn't feel like I was doing very well with it. And somehow, because I don't remember ever expressing this to anybody, but somehow the person who was the volunteer coordinator at that time was going to start focusing on other things. And she decided to leave, and she needed to find a replacement. And she looked me up, of all people. I mean, I didn't know how many volunteers they had at the time, but it was like it was divine intervention. Craziest thing. And of course, I mean, that's right up my alley. Yes, give me the tedious, boring stuff. That is exactly what I love to do. You know, making sure the database is all nice and formatted correctly, and we've got good formulas going on, and oof, that's what I live for.
Oh my goodness, I've got
Yes,
the
I am getting a little toasty.
Oh, that's awesome. So right now, currently you are the director of the volunteer program, and then you also kind of do double duty as the secretary of the board. You're a board member for RfR
Right.
too.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So first I became the volunteer director, and then uh, Daryl, again, I don't know how or why he decided that I would be a good board member, but then and they all interviewed me, and they decided that I would be a good secretary, and that's what I do in when I was working. That's what I did the majority of my adult life, is I was a secretary for employment. So that was an easy transition, taking notes at meetings and you know, regular secretary stuff.
Got it. Well, let's move into the program itself, the volunteer program. I kind of see this as the very first stop that every single volunteer makes. But tell me kind of what your view of the purpose of the volunteer program is.
Well, if we didn't have the volunteers, we'd just be like 7 people sitting around hoping that people find us, and maybe there'll be somebody around to answer a call or a chat. I mean, the volunteers are the what we base the entire
Yeah.
organization on. And so, do you want me to just go over the process,
Yeah.
or?
Well,
Okay,
uh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let's go over the process. Yeah.
okay. So they just fill out an application, go online, go to our website, Recovering from Religion, and up at the top on the right-hand side, it says volunteer. And then it has a list of volunteer jobs, but the majority of people, sorry, just blasted through the door. Okay, so the majority of people will either be will sign up to be a helpline agent or a support group leader. And then they just fill out the form. It's just basic demographic information, and they agree to all of the acknowledgments and all the legalese. And then at the very end of the form, it sends you to a website to schedule an interview. And that interview is where it's at, because that's the most important piece of the puzzle that we need to find out if the volunteer is a good fit. So at this time, I have 5 volunteers that are interviewers, and they spend anywhere from 30 minutes to maybe even 2 to 2.5 hours going through about 30 questions with the individuals who would like to volunteer. And then they need to answer 12 evaluation questions. And I base the acceptance of the volunteers very, very heavily on that, because otherwise they're just names to me and addresses. So it's very important for us to make sure that they are people who can demonstrate compassion, that can listen, because that's an art that seems to be needed to be manifest more in life, because a lot of people who interview, they can't even listen to the questions to answer them. They kind of go off on their own tangents, and so we kind of have to weed those ones out, because if you can imagine, you are crying, you're calling in, or you're chatting in, and you really need someone to listen to you, and then somebody comes at you with here's what you need to do,
Right.
and they don't even get the full story from you, because they're so intent on telling you what you need to do. We can't have that. We need to have someone who is completely focused on the caller or the chatter. And in the support group meetings, we can have the leader dominating the conversation, he or she needs to just be a facilitator, is there to kind of keep things in check and make sure everybody's following the rules, because it's peer support. The leader doesn't have all the answers. So then after they're interviewed, if they pass the interview, then I send them on to the self-paced training, which is that self-paced training. And at the very end, there's a quiz. Once I get the quiz, it's just a basic comprehension. It's like 10 or 12 questions. And at the end, I send them on to the one-on-one training. And that is an extremely comprehensive training that takes a minimum of 2 hours. And they're given access to all of our systems in order to provide the resources that they'll need to provide to the chatters and the callers. And they are taught about what to do whenever somebody calls in that they could be a troll or somebody who is beyond our scope. What we can do in different circumstances if somebody sounds like they're suicidal, what steps to take. It's I think it's really improved, because when I first started, I think it was back in 2017 or so, it was basically, here, read these forms, watch this video, you're good to go. I felt totally unprepared.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way too when I first joined. My friend Alex and I, we formed the Springfield, Missouri support group chapter, and we were they basically we were interviewed. I was interviewed, asked some questions, and then I was given the green light, and then we're like, okay, now what? We'll start your meeting. You can start. You have our blessing. Like, well, what does that mean? And we kind of had to just figure it out and make it up, but luckily we found a good process, and like you said, the training has vastly improved. And so the volunteer program, you guys are really kind of the gateway to RfR. If I wanted to come in and volunteer for RfR, you guys are the very first people that I'm going to talk to, the very first people I'm going to experience, and then you shuffle us off to the appropriate program to get the appropriate training. Right. And that's awesome. You guys do such a fantastic job. You guys are very communicative with us as directors and the people who handle the volunteers and the different programs. Kind of like, this person has got a few red flags, or this person looks great. And so it's and the questions too are fantastic that you ask. Not only are they just have like this surface level of answer, sure, blatant answer, but there's also kind of the questions sort of point to their overall character, like you had kind of shared, and how they kind of see the world, how they operate with other people. And I like it. And we've had a few people where you ask the question and they just go off on some stories, and then they keep talking and they keep talking, and then you can kind of get the hint that, well, they just want to talk, and it's not going to work here.
No. Yeah, unfortunately, even though I'm sure that they have some great stories and they're very entertaining, and a person can learn from them, this is not the platform for that. In fact, if they wanted to put it in writing, we'll be happy to accept it in the blog.
Exactly.
but that's on the helpline or the support group leader, it's not the place for it.
Yeah, because not just everybody can do this kind of work. This really takes some empathy and putting yourself into other people's shoes, and then also listening, knowing that what you have to say isn't the most important thing to say, but what people are saying to you, the RfR clients are saying to you, that's the most important part at the moment, because they may not have ever said this kind of stuff before. So you got, I look at the culture, look at the volunteers that we have at Recovering from Religion, and they all came through you, and they're just fantastic people. The group of people we have here is just incredible. So I can't
Mhm.
thank you enough for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm just, like you said, the gatekeeper. I'm not responsible for the great job they do. I just bring them in. That's it.
Now, do you need any help in this program? Is there, or do you kind of feel like you've got it sorted out and settled, and the volunteers you have are enough to do the work that is required?
Definitely not. It's it's kind of uh, volunteers come and go. That's just the nature of the
Yep.
beast. And so it's not like we have a static 350 volunteers and everybody's, just plugging along. It's a well-oiled machine, and everybody shows up at their designated time. It doesn't work that way. Out of the 350, we probably have around 100 that
Mhm.
are active at any given time. And we're all adults and life happens. So we just have to accept that they're going to have to take care of some things, and maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't, but other people will fill that space. I don't want to make it sound like they're just a bunch of numbers and they're all expendable. We value each and every one of
Mhm.
them in their given time. In addition, it can be a little draining, and that's one of the things that we really focus on in the training is you have to take care of yourself first. You always put your mask on first in the plane. If you're starting to get burnout, take a step back. Sometimes you have to take 2 or 3 steps back, but that's the most important thing. You can't completely drain yourself, and then you're useless not
Right.
only to the rest of the people in the organization, but probably to your family and friends. So we totally understand that, and then there'll be somebody else that'll not necessarily take your place, but they'll just kind of move in. It's just kind of very flows.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've experienced that quite a bit too in the support group program.
One of the things that, even though I get all enthused about the whole database and working behind the scenes, the one time that I really feel the enthusiasm for what we do, or I really get to see the benefits, is when we get together for the excursion or when we get together for a leadership conference. Because then I get to see, even though, I mean, that's a lot of names for a person to remember, but I'll sometimes I interview people and I'll be like, oh, I remember I interviewed you. You're still with us, yay! And I can finally put a face to that name, and that's the most gratifying experience. Even though the majority of what I do is just kind of like moving things around on a computer screen. That's not exciting to other people, but the excitement of that, um, getting to know those real people who were just some names, and finding out what they're doing with the organization. Because if a lot of what happens in Recovering from Religion, like many organizations, is a person comes in and they think, I think that there is a vacuum here, and I have a special skill set. I think I could fill that vacuum. And then we're like, yes, go for it. And that's one of the things that I love to see, because I might have interviewed somebody and I don't know what happened to them afterward. I passed them on through the process, but then it turns out that, like, they're now going to be on the board, or they're going to start their own part of the organization, like the international field. I was friends with Sherry a long time ago, And I'm like, wow, look at how it's flying, it's just taking off. And here I am just kind of like moving some names to another cell and adding this up, sending out an email. It's just I'm plugging away in my own little world, and they're doing these fantastic things, and I love to see that.
Well, so one of the last questions I've got for you, and you actually kind of addressed it already. For you personally, what have you gotten out of volunteering? What has volunteering been like for you? Do you feel like you answered that already in your previous?
A little bit, but I just feel extremely proud to be part
Mm,
of recovering from religion. When people ask me, like what I do, I have some part-time jobs, but what lights me up, what my my real mission is recovering from religion. And some people, like, they're taken aback just by the name of it, but it doesn't bother me a bit. If you want to hear about it, I'm glad to tell you about it. Yeah, that's my main, not my purpose in life, but it's the thing that fulfills me the most out of all of the stuff that I do in my life. That's the thing that fulfills me the most.
Shana, thank you so much for joining us today, sitting down and talking with me, and kind of really, I understand the volunteer program a lot better than I did going into this. So thank you for that.
Great. It's been a pleasure for me too.
Well, folks, that's going to wrap up this part of the getting to know all of the RfR programs. Next up, I think we're going to start going into some of the main programs, helpline support groups. And so watch out for those videos, and or if it's already been published, they're on a playlist and you can see them all. All right, folks. Well, have a great day, and thanks so much for joining us.